I think this book has exactly 69 chapters. So it would be wild if this was just the last chapter. The end of this book is them having free-fall sex.
You're listening to Getting Fae'd. We,
Meike,
Lukas,
and Lea are reading A Court of Mist and Fury for the very first time. Today we are covering chapters 5 and 6. Get Fae'd with us.
Woo!
Happy birthday to us. Zum Geburtstag viel Glück. Happy birthday, dear Getting Fae'd. Happy Geburtstag viel Glück. You guys,
it's our anniversary!
We made it a whole year.
I'm
Great.
so proud of us.
Yes,
and
great.
I'm proud of you guys at home for listening for an entire year.
For staying with us.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
You know, insert every cheesy thank you for supporting us. Thank you for downloading our episode. Thank you for commenting and whatnot. Like, we appreciate it, but we don't have to talk about it for like 10 minutes. I think you're here for the episode.
Yes.
So are we.
Just know that we love you guys. We appreciate you.
Yeah, this podcast is a lot of fun.
Yes.
Yeah. We and you at home made it through book 1 in this year, finally. And now we're at the beginning of book 2, and it's already so much more juicy than book 1, and I can't wait to get into it.
So, let's start with the juice right away. Who wants to recap the last 2 chapters? Luki?
That's me.
Yeah.
The last 2 chapters. I think they took a ride, Lucian and Feyre, to this village, just to show Feyre that they don't need their help. And they think Feyre is Jesus, and then they wanted to get married, and Rhysand showed up, and that's basically it.
Well, they wanted to get married, but Feyre had a lot of reservations and was begging in her mind. And then a knight in not shining but black armor arrived.
He answered her call.
Yes, and that's exactly where chapter 5 picks back up. Rhysand appears and the guards begin to draw their weapons, but they freeze in their place. And we don't really know, are they just scared or is it magic because Rhysand has raised his hand a bit? What do you think?
I think it's his mind magic. Like, didn't he halt the guards under the mountain and was like, you do as I say, you don't touch her anymore, her being Feyre. And then, like, they went rigid for a moment and then they did what he wanted. So I think he's using magic.
Yeah, but right off the bat, we have to talk about something very important. Because because not everyone freezes. But Ianthe does not freeze, but backs off and eventually just fucks off and disappears. What do you think this is all about?
I mean, last chapter, she said something like not to worry about Rhysand because the high priestesses have that under control.
Sure they do.
So maybe him turning up means something went wrong.
True, maybe.
So maybe she's not only scared of him, but like scared of what that means, that he's here and not wherever. I don't know, they took him prisoner or whatever.
Yeah, but during these chapters we get kind of some hints that there's some backstory between them, like Rhysand doesn't really have a high opinion of her, and she obviously does not have a very high opinion of him. She is scared of him and flees.
Yeah, but so is everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, but this is honestly kind of pathetic. Because, like, Hart and Bronn, whom we met, were like, oh, if he dares to show up, we will take care of it. Lucian was like, oh, we'll have it covered, we'll take care of it. And none of them does anything to oppose him here.
But I actually kind of like that because it just shows how powerful he actually is.
Yeah.
I think that's a very usual strategy to like hype up a character and be like, oh my god, they are so powerful, so that when they actually show up, you are like, oh my god, they are so powerful. Like the reactions of the characters emphasize their power.
Yeah, I think it's just funny that they were so on this, we will take him on thing, and then they just didn't.
Typical man behavior.
Yeah, a lot of talk, no action behind it.
But honestly, I figured out why I like Rhysand.
Because he's sexy.
Yeah, no, it's not just because he seems to be darkly sexy and thrilling, like the book says. But because whenever he arrives, plot begins.
Yeah.
You know, I might not agree with his methods and what he does, but whenever he does something, that means the story is progressing. So he's a character that actually has a purpose. And I think that just makes him fun because, you know, he has reasons to be somewhere and to do something. So I think that's just something I enjoy.
Yeah, that's a good observation. I feel like I have the tendency for this, ooh, I like the villain, ooh, thing. But it's not necessarily, ooh, the villain is so sexy, but they're just often quite interesting characters that are interesting for the plot. And that's why they're characters that I like.
I guess that's why I'm disappointed in Lucian, because he felt like a character that could have meaning. And then for one book, and now these chapters, he's just there. And he doesn't really do anything. I mean, he has some backstory, but he's not that interesting right now. But he just has a cool vibe. So I'm sticking with my Lucian love. And I think he will be important later.
Hopefully.
I hope.
I mean, that backstory setup could mean there's a lot of potential for story, at least.
We'll just have to wait. This is a POV book, and we're stuck with Feyre.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait.
Yes. And when Rysand appears, he announces he has come to cash in his bargain. But really, he obviously came because Feyre begged for someone to rescue her. But Feyre doesn't really want to be rescued like this, at least. And Rysand scolds Tamlin. He says, "You try to break the bargain and you know what will happen." And I was just like, no, I don't. Tell me what will happen.
Also, they didn't try to break the bargain. He just didn't show up to collect her.
Yeah,
Like, did he expect Feyre to just take the train and come visit him?
I think what he means at this point is that Tamlin should not do anything to stop this.
Oh, okay.
Because then he would break the bargain.
I mean, maybe Tamlin even did try to break the bargain. And maybe he was in cahoots with the High Priestesses, and maybe they had like a plan that worked for 3 months, and that's why he didn't show up. And I mean, obviously Tamlin doesn't include Feyre and shit, so she didn't know, so we didn't know.
Makes sense. But I think he means, you know what angering me means. Like, he's not specifically saying what breaking the bargain means, but just, you anger me and you know what that means.
But do you think there's some magical repercussions if you break a bargain like this? Because what else is keeping them?
Yeah, there has to be, right? Like,
I mean, there were magical consequences when Feyre fulfilled the bargain, when she called out the solution to the riddle. Like, that instantly happened, that the curse was broken and Amarantha lost.
Yeah.
So maybe something will happen. We don't know. All we know is that Tamlin is, like, he tends to be kind of pathetic and wants Rysand to name his price, and he basically kind of begs
again.
Yeah.
for him to leave Feyre with him.
Yeah. He protests and begs Rysand to at least let them finish the ceremony. But Rysand is like, was I interrupting? I thought it was over already. At least Feyre seemed to think so. So he's dropping heavy hints that Feyre didn't really want to go through with it.
Do you think that's wise of him?
No.
Because I feel like he is on her side. Like, he wants good for her. He is not very nice to her at some points, but he seems like he wants to be an ally and he cares about her. So telling Tamlin, who knowingly has some problems with his anger issues, should he be like, oh, actually she doesn't want it? Like, Feyre didn't say anything yet. Should he be like, oh, in her mind, I clearly read she doesn't really want to marry you?
I think he just didn't collect the bargain before because he just was like, okay, I'm gonna leave her alone. She should like recover and stuff. But I think he just can't help himself. I just think he likes to tease and poke.
Yeah.
And that's why he does that. And I do think it's not wise.
No, but I think as Feyre states in her mind is that Rysand thinks pissing off Tamlin is an art form.
And he is an artist at that.
Yes.
He's also an artist.
Yeah, I think I agree. He doesn't want to throw Feyre under the bus. He just can't suppress the snarky comments.
Okay, makes sense.
And he doesn't straight out say it. He just alludes to it.
Yeah.
But you know what? I really like how this mental bridge of them is used in this case. Because often, I think it's a trope that characters have like a mental connection. And often it's just used for them to communicate and have like silent arguments no one else knows about and maybe have secrets. But here it's actually like Feyre didn't actively call out to Rysand. She was just calling out to herself, basically being like, oh no, someone save me. As a lot of people do, I guess. But then someone actually shows up because someone actually hears her. And I think that's a nice use of this tropey connection, I guess.
Yes. Well, Rysand whisks her away and Tamlin cannot do anything, or at least doesn't do anything, which even leaves Lucian a bit shocked. And she's whisked away to under the mountain with... No, not under the mountain.
Again!
Oh no!
She is whisked away to Night Court, which apparently under the mountain has been modeled after. Just casual lore drop in like a little sentence there.
She didn't tell us that in book 1, right?
No.
And
I was just
so.
like, what?
I was surprised.
Yeah.
Because that gives the whole Amarantha Rysand thing another layer. Like, it kind of looked like she was just using him because it would pain him. But now it also means she was kind of looking up to his court.
Yeah. Well, later well, I don't know if it's really an explanation, but he says, yeah, Amarantha was not very creative. She just like copied my court in Almost Sacred Mountain. And I was like, is this kind of a self-owned by Sarah J. Maas? Because she's like, I'm just copying this court now.
Yeah, but maybe it was not just uncreative of Amarantha, but maybe it was also a symbol. Like she was, I'm taking power over your court, basically. Like I'm reshaping what's yours to be mine.
And I mean, it's also, I think there's a difference between copying something and being inspired by something. I think her as a villainess could have the intention of like, I will take your most sacred mountain and I want to make a court there. Oh, I know there's already a court in some mountain, so I will do that too. So yeah.
You mean like Sarah J. Maas copied Beauty and the Beast? No.
No, she was inspired by Beauty and the Beast.
But can we just talk about a very important thing? The smell of Night Court.
Jasmine!
Again, Jasmine, like the servants of Rysand under the mountain. And I proclaimed that Jasmine represents innocence and purity and whatnot. And I actually Googled a bit further. And I think in especially Western culture and Western literature, the symbol of jasmine flowers is often used to symbolize exotic passion, mystery, and the ephemeral nature of love or beauty. And I think that's very fitting for the darkly sexy and thrilling adventure that might unfold in Rysand's court.
Yes, definitely. So they arrive in Night Court, and obviously it's the most beautiful place Feyre had ever seen.
That's also a theme with Night Court.
Yes.
When Rysand showed up, it was the most beautiful man she's ever seen. Now it's the most beautiful place she's ever seen.
Now only the most beautiful woman she's ever seen is missing.
But yeah, they're not actually in Night Court, but in his private residence. It's a palace on top of the mountain, I guess, and the court is under the mountain again. And this palace sits atop a high mountain, and it is surrounded by snow-capped peaks. And there are many, many windows that have no glass, but are open to the elements. And it is not cold, but there's a warm, jasmine-scented breeze.
And have you mentioned that it is night?
Yeah.
The stars are out.
I was curious about that, because wasn't she like, she woke up, they got ready for the wedding. They had their little walk down the aisle. And then Rysand showed up, and it's evening.
The timing doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, spoiler for the next 2 pages, but maybe we talk about it here. I think I just assumed, and Feyre just assumed, that it's always night in Night Court because it's always spring in Spring Court. But that's not the case. Like, she wakes up and it's just morning and the sun is out. So I'm confused about the timing.
Yeah.
Maybe they have not like vertical time zones, but horizontal time zones.
Maybe.
Yeah, but let's talk about this whole, he calls it solar courts and seasonal courts thing, because it kind of doesn't make any sense. Rysand explains that seasonal courts use their magic to like manipulate the nature and keep their court in one season eternally. But like the solar courts are powerful, but they cannot even change the path of the sun.
Yeah, I call
bullshit. But aren't seasons also influenced by the sun and how close the sun is to the planet?
Well, if you go scientifically, the sun does not have a path, but the planet does.
Yes. But
And-
like Rysand says, we cannot change the path of the sun.
I know. I mean, this is like half knowledge. The day cycle happens because the Earth is turning around its axis.
Yeah.
And the seasonal cycle happens because the Earth is moving around the sun. And
Yes.
sometimes because it is wonky, because it is tilted, sometimes it's nearer to the sun and sometimes it's farther away. And
Yeah,
that's how
that's
seasons
how
happen.
seasons happen. That's completely full knowledge, not half knowledge.
So,
Yes, and it's also what I said, like both season and like the day and night rhythm are influenced just by that.
yes.
Yeah, and it also feels like you'd need more powerful magic to influence the path of the planet around the sun than to influence just the spin around its own axis.
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
I
it doesn't
think
make any sense.
for some reason Sarah J. Maas just wanted to have day and night in this night court place, and I don't really get the reason, because I just personally think it would be very, very cool to have a place that's like always night.
I think Night Court will be her healing place in
Yeah.
a way. Like, at least it kicks off her healing journey. And for your healing place to be eternally dark
It's a bit
just
hard.
I
doesn't.
guess. But in my head, it's not eternally dark. It's like lit
Moonlight.
up by moonlight, maybe by polar lights, by immense starlight. And I think it's not like dark and depressive in that way, but it's more like a nice cozy room with fairy lights.
Okay, I'm gonna make a vitamin D joke. She's gonna need a lot of vitamin D then.
Big D.
I have to say, I actually liked your joke.
Props.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for contributing to this podcast.
What I
Yeah.
would like to add to that is, I mean, they have this magic to keep their house warm. Maybe they can also have like bigger bubbles that just surround their court, and then
Yeah,
it's warm and even warmer or colder. So that would maybe explain how they keep seasons there, but they cannot change the path of the planet.
Period. Well, but I think it's incredibly funny how Rysand reasons why Night Court is warm, even though there are like snow peaks.
Yeah.
Feyre's like, oh, why is it warm even though it's snowy in winter? And he's like, well, you heat your house when it's cold. That's what I'm doing. I'm just using magic. And I love that.
Yeah, it's very reasonable.
Yeah. He's like, well, I don't want to be cold.
It's like if you would visit someone in Canada, maybe, and you're like, why is it not cold in your house? And they're like, because I don't want to live in the cold? What the fuck is that kind of question?
I'm a very magical being. I have very high powers. Of course, I'm making myself comfortable in my home.
So yeah, Feyre is surprised that it's warm. She is also surprised that there are no screams of torture and pain to be heard.
This chapter is so funny.
It's just the same shit that happened at the beginning of book 1. She was like, huh? I thought fairies are all evil and torture people. Why is there no misery here? And then she spent an entire year learning that at least Springcourt fairies are nice people. And then she goes up to Nightcourt and is like, where are your torture chambers, huh?
It's so funny. Then she's like, when he explains that he has a court under the mountain and this is just his residence, she's like, so this is where the torturing happened.
I mean, we don't know that it's not happening there yet.
Yeah, you're right.
And he's like, oh, I separate my job from my private life. So maybe he's just a jailer or something.
Based, though. I
Yeah.
think this whole scene is very similar to what happened in book 1 when she arrived in Springcourt, but it feels different in a way that Rysand just seems to be a very different ruler than
Yeah.
Tamlin is. Like, they are both powerful, and maybe both of them don't like their job. But while Tamlin is like, oh, I don't like my job, but I'm just gonna do everything I hate about it anyway, because honor. Rysand is just like, well, I guess I'm gonna be a high ruler, but I'm just gonna have a private life.
A high ruler?
He smokes a lot of jasmine.
I'm just gonna have a private life, because being High Lord doesn't have to define me.
Seriously, I'd like to see the LinkedIn profiles of both Tamlin and Rysand. I think you can see a lot about their personalities there.
Yeah.
This whole like comparison to Tamlin and the Springcourt is sprinkled throughout these whole 2 chapters.
You mean it's Springcourted?
No.
Rejected.
It happens again and again, and I think every time Nightcourt wins in this comparison.
Yeah.
Nightcourt rules.
Nightcourt is awesome.
It's the most beautiful place ever.
With the most beautiful man ever.
Let's just wait for their women.
I mean, seriously, this whole, we are in snowy mountains, but it's warm. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
I love the mountains, but I don't like the cold. I endure the cold to be in the mountains, but it's just great.
Yeah. Yeah, do you know these videos where it's like, what villa would you choose? And then it's like, oh, this one looks good. Oh, this one's even better. That wouldn't be for me. And it feels like you see Spring Court and you're like, it's kind of good. And then you see Night Court and you go like, oh, well, I would choose that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, Feyre and Rysand have a little fight where Rysand explains he was responding to her wish. But Feyre says she didn't mean it like this. Like, she didn't mean to be rescued like this. And she doesn't really seem to have her emotions in order, which is understandable. But just because she didn't want to go through with the marriage doesn't mean she wanted to be whisked away.
Reasonable.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But to compare his abduction of Feyre to Tamlin's abduction of Feyre in book 1, I think you can really see the difference. Because yes, I believe that Tamlin just fell in love with Feyre over the course of this time together. But he had selfish intentions.
Yes.
He whipped her away just because he wanted to break his curse, and he just happened to pick a miserable person that would have a better life with him. But I feel like Rysand really did have the intention to spare her the awkwardness of admitting that she didn't want to marry Tamlin.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he says like, now you have an excuse, you can blame it on me now that you didn't marry him. And for a short moment, I thought he had a point, and I was like, this is a good idea. But then, as Feyre points out, bro, you made it pretty clear I didn't want to go through with it. I was like, yeah.
Yeah. The idea is good. We have to work on the execution.
Yes.
Just like communism.
I mean, yeah, it's not wrong. So, as it turns out, their mind link has not only been active in this moment as she reached out in her desperation, but for this whole time.
She's been linked in.
Not sponsored.
Yet. Reach out to us.
And that is why Rysand noticed every time Feyre was woken up by her nightmares and had to puke her guts out and stuff. So yeah, that's good to know, I guess. And then he dismisses her to her room and emphasizes that she is not a prisoner, but a guest, and with that she is free to roam wherever she wants. To which she answers, I wish to roam home. And I was just like, when did she become so funny?
I love the person Feyre is with Rysand.
Yeah.
She's much more funny, and the banter is just awesome. And I think it's moments like these where I understand why enemies to lovers works for so many people, because I'm not the biggest fan of enemies to lovers tropes, because it feels mostly constructed and kind of like I don't want to hate the person I'm going to love at some point. But here I can see why it's just so much fun.
Yeah, it was actually quite hard for me to find the words to describe their banter, because it's not just fun banter. They're not just poking at each other, but they're also not having like hard, hateful arguments. I think they're on their way to have funny banter, but they're not quite there yet. But I really like their dynamic right now.
And I think it's gonna get even better.
Yes.
But more on that later.
Because before she throws some shoes at him because she gets angry.
Honestly, the way I wrote that down in my notes is just the shoe scene. No notes. Great.
Yeah, it started and it was described like, her rage, it went red before her eyes. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? Is he attacking her? And then, she's just angry, I guess. Okay. Yeah, she throws her shoes at him.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's unusually surprised by that.
No, the best part is that she hits him pretty hard on the back of his head.
And that's where it stops being awesome, because I don't like his reaction. It reminded me too much of Tamlin. He gets so angry so quick. And I was like, bro. Like, she's very emotional right now. Like, I do not condone violence, but I understand why she threw that shoe.
Yeah, and like...
It's a shoe, it's not a knife.
Right.
Yeah, I mean... This would be almost fine in our world if it was just like a soft slipper.
Yeah.
But he's an immortal High Lord, like she's not gonna physically hurt him.
But now, guys, let's read between the lines. When she hits him, he's like, interesting. Guys, you remember what I said last episode?
Yes.
You can say it.
You're a genius.
Yeah.
You're a genius, Meike.
Yeah.
You're great.
She has super strength.
I mean, it will be confirmed in a bit. So
I knew it.
Good theory.
My joke about her being Super Hulk is correct.
Which is funny.
Hulk Feyre confirmed.
Where does the super strength come from? But it's great. I like that she has special powers.
Yeah. But let's continue. We can
Yes.
focus on this when it actually comes up in the story.
Yeah.
I
And-
just needed to collect my praise.
Well, the last thing Feyre hears is a female voice saying, "So that went well." We don't know who that is
Who
at
do you
this
think
moment.
this might be?
I thought maybe this was the high priestess of this court.
Ooh.
Maybe there was some scheming going on.
For just a little moment, I thought it was Ianthe,
Yeah, me too.
that they were in cahoots.
But yeah, we will find out who that is later. And then Feyre goes to her room, which obviously is perfect as well.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
This bathtub is just amazing. It's like hanging off the side of the mountain, and it's like warm, and she has a view. Oh, it's great.
Pretty awesome.
I think a James Bond villain would have this mountainside bathtub.
No, you know who would live in that room? The Bond girl that is shady.
So you think Feyre is the Bond girl now?
Yeah, he's Batman, and that fits.
So she is
What?
For a second, my mind was like, yeah, Batman and James Bond are clearly the same person.
Robert Pattinson for James Bond. I'm calling it here. Well, again, there are no glass windows. They're just, I guess, window openings. And there's a large bed with white and ivory colors. And she describes it as open, airy, plush, and calm. Very good, very good.
I think that's what's missing from Spring Court right now. Like, everything there is tense. Like, Tamlin is tense, the whole court is tense because shit happened, and now they try to rebuild. Ianthe is tense, and Feyre is tense, and nothing is calm. And this is a moment for her to breathe.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like a camping ground because of all the tents.
Well, she describes the room as fit for an empress. And she also does not build a trap, as she did in her first night at Spring Court.
I mean, it doesn't have a point. Like, she could barricade the door, like, what's that gonna do?
He could just fly in through the open windows. But yeah, speaking of those open windows, I was wondering, let's just imagine they are having wild sex in that room, potentially.
Okay.
Okay.
Are these windows protected, like from them falling out? Like when you're like against the wall or something, then you turn and you just flop. I mean, he
Probably
can
not.
fly, but
Maybe this will be the case.
that would be
In
so
chapter
funny.
19, they will
Or
fall.
chapter 69. They would have free fall sex. I'm calling it here.
Do you call the chapter number as well, or just that this will happen? 3, 4, 6.
I mean, it would be funny for her to
Yeah.
put like a very intense sex scene in
No,
chapter
I think
69.
I think this book has exactly 69 chapters. So it would be wild if this was just the
think-
last chapter. The end of this book is them having free fall sex.
I mean, maybe it's like the end, it's a happy end for that book, and they're celebrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Like, it would be a funny last sentence if it were like, and then we were falling.
And coming. So Feyre starts to reflect on what happened at the wedding, and she really wants to explain to Tamlin why she hesitated, and she notices that she wants to wait to get married, maybe until their mating bond snaps into place, or at least until Tamlin has also confronted his fears and therefore can let Feyre be free, which I find very sensible. Would have been a good choice from the beginning. But yeah, she decides to go to bed and sob herself to sleep. But not without wearing some interesting night clothes. And these night clothes are very Aladdin's Jasmine. Like Jasmine from Aladdin.
Jasmine?
Which is like the whole thing
Yeah.
of this court. Because she's wearing a turquoise crop top and some ankle-length pants. And then it's the next morning and we get to see some familiar faces.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry to row back, but does that mean that we might have an Aladdin adaptation in this book? Maybe that's the
Oh,
Disney
boy.
movie she's going for.
I mean, I was thinking about it, but the question is like what happens in Aladdin?
I haven't seen it. I
Like
don't know.
there is Jasmine, the princess.
Yeah,
and then
that's
there's
Feyre.
Aladdin, who is the
Isn't-
street kid.
That's Rysand. Obviously Rysand.
Doesn't he join like this gang? Of
Yeah, that's
I
exactly what
think
Rysand
that's
did.
not the first part. Like Aladdin has this genie. He finds this
Yeah.
genie and he wishes to be a prince or at least to appear like a prince so that he can marry Jasmine, I guess. But then there's also Jafar, who is an evil sultan or something.
Right.
And he marries Jasmine. Does he get the genie or something and wishes for her? I don't know. I haven't seen this movie in quite a while. I think maybe I've only seen the third one. Like, who is which part, because there are two people who want to marry the girl. The evil Sultan
that's
and
Tamlin.
the fake upstart, who is a good man in his heart. I think the logical thing is that Rhysand is Jafar, the evil Sultan.
Oh, okay.
But Rhysand is not evil.
But he's supposed to be evil.
But I don't know. So Jafar is the Sultan. I mean, Tamlin plays the fiddle, so he is the Sultan of Swing.
He's also the Sultan of Spring.
question-
anyway, we
the
don't know
thing
what's
is-
happening in Aladdin.
the
I don't
thing
think
is-
we have the basis to make
I
an
have-
educated guess. Let me finish my thought.
Sorry.
I'm finished.
I have an interjection. Because we know Aladdin has a flying carpet, and who can fly?
Rhysand.
Point made.
Match point getting fake.
I have spoken. So the next morning, we get to see some familiar faces. Well, not too familiar, because her shadowy handmaidens from under the mountain are actually now fully corporeal, and we get to see their faces and also learn their names, which are Nuala and Caradwen. And I actually like these names, especially Caradwen.
Yeah, me too.
And Nuala? That
Nuala.
just sounds like a dog.
Kind of.
Nuala.
You're right. You know Nala, the stomping dog?
Oh no, I just
yeah.
know Nala, the lioness.
There's this dog on Instagram, I think, and she does like, do the stomping dance. Do the stomping dance.
Oh, I think I know her.
Do the stomping dance.
The Nala stomps.
Yes.
Jeez.
The Nala stomps, yeah, that's what he always sings. I was so happy to see them again. I fell in love with them because they just sounded cool. And now they are back and they have names, which must mean they will come up later again.
But yeah, they get her ready, and then she sits in her great bathtub, and then she feels the tugging of Rhysand summoning her to breakfast. And for breakfast, she wears another nice outfit that enforces this slight Arabic flair even more, and I'd like to read that part to you. My high-waisted peach pants were loose and billowing, gathered at the ankles with velvet cuffs of bright gold. The long sleeves of the matching top were made of gossamer, also gathered at the wrists, and the top itself hung just to my navel, revealing a sliver of skin as I walked. Comfortable, easy to move in, to run. Feminine, exotic.
Yeah, that's true. It has quite some like Oriental Arabic vibes. And I don't really know how to feel about this because these are all white Scottish people, basically, if you look at the Night Court map.
I also don't know too much about Arabic culture, if that is like actually Arabic clothing or just like Disney's version of Arabic, because it is very Jasmine.
Yes, it feels like just a Disney version. But maybe, I don't know. But I like that he puts her into pants.
Yeah.
Because it feels like a very stark contrast to what she had to wear in Spring Court. Because she had to appear ladylike and, you know, someone who does not go out and hunt. But here she can wear comfortable clothing and can wear pants because this is kind of what her usual style is.
And they are still feminine, though.
Yeah.
And then Feyre joins Rhysand for breakfast, where he gives her and us a bit of a lore dump. But not before Feyre can give him a little piece of her mind as she scolds him for summoning her, which I'm happy to see her confidence. Yay.
But can we just talk about how beautiful this breakfast setup is? He sits on this little... Is it a balcony? I don't know. In my mind, it's a balcony. And they are gazing upon the sunny mountain range. And it's just great. You know, the air is warm.
Yeah.
I just think it's a great breakfast.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that Italy vacation.
Oh, that
where
was
we were sitting
great.
on the porch. And we also saw a little mountain.
Yeah.
And we had this Mediterranean breakfast and a lot of cheese.
And pancakes. But yeah, at this point, they talk about the difference between the seasonal and solar courts. We don't have to unravel that again. But what I found interesting is that Rhysand says, our nights are more spectacular. So spectacular that some even awaken at sunset and go to bed at dawn. So, vampires?
This must be the obvious conclusion.
No, it's not, but it feels kind of vampire-y.
Kind of cool to have like a different culture in there where the difference is just that they have a different rhythm. Like
Yeah.
a different day rhythm. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Even if it's not magical, I can see how, like, in the north, in the mountains, the nights are more spectacular than in other places of the world.
Yeah.
There have to be polar lights. Yeah. I want a scene where she sees polar light and is like, these are some nice polar lights.
I have to paint them.
No.
I'm telling you now, this is when she discovers her painting again.
True. But honestly, at this point, I'm like not actively, but a small part of me is actually rooting for her to start painting again. I mean, to start painting, but to not talk about painting.
I mean, show us what she's painting. That was always interesting, that one time it happened. Mm-hmm. And while they're eating, Rysand notices that Feyre has lost some weight, which I found concerning because his reference is her under the mountain, where she definitely did not get enough food. So very concerning, and he is concerned.
I mean, she's throwing up basically every night.
True.
So, and Tamlin doesn't know, so he apparently doesn't care and doesn't notice.
So she's definitely not healthy. And this leads them to talk about their mental bond. He compares it to a bridge that is connected to a door on each side. And Faye can put up a shield to make it harder for him or someone with his powers to push through this door. But in a moment of high emotion, it can happen that, in this case Feyre, subconsciously opens her door and then shouts her thoughts down the bridge into his mind, which happens when she has nightmares or which happened at the wedding. And he offers to teach her to control this shield, but first he reveals his plans for this week. He's about to teach Feyre how to read. Yay!
Okay, first of all, very cool mechanic. Mm-hmm. I'm intrigued to see where this goes. Mm-hmm. And this is the point where I kind of realized the potential for this dynamic and possible relationship between them. Because I feel like if she actually masters this skill to control this bridge as much as he does, it would kind of not completely diminish, but at least reduce the power gap that they have. Mm-hmm. If she can shut off her mind, if she can maybe even learn to penetrate his mind, and this would be a really nice dynamic, because so far every Fae guy is just so much more powerful than her. And I think that's something we never saw with Tamlin. Like, he always had the upper hand. And yeah. I don't think that he ever tried to reduce this power gap in any way. And I think this is the potential that the Rysand and Feyre relationship has.
Yeah,
You're right.
I also like that this bridge goes both ways.
Do you think we'll meet someone else who has Rysand's power? Because I think twice on one page he says, like, I can enter, but also someone with my power, which means he's not the only one who's powerful enough to do that.
Probably.
And he's very adamant about her learning to shield. So maybe he already knows who has that power. Maybe.
Yep, Voldemort.
A new enemy in this book will be able to do the same, and it will be important for her to be able to shield.
Yeah, I think so. Moving on to chapter 6. This continues exactly where chapter 5 left off, and Feyre refuses his offer to teach her, but Rysand convinces her that as a High Lord's wife, reading is a necessary skill. Like, she's expected to have some correspondence of her own and expected to write and give speeches and even more stuff. And at this moment, I could see him becoming a friend and a close advisor rather than a lover, and her being together with Tamlin, who got over his issues. That could also be a cool outcome. I don't think like these chapters wholly support this theory, but like the way he convinces her and says like, listen, if this is the path you want to choose, this is what you should do. I really could enjoy that dynamic as well.
It would definitely be a nice take on the love triangle, because it would kind of solidify the idea that women can be friends with men. Because I think often in stories you have a couple and then you insert a new character who is a man, and then she falls in love with him and leaves the other person. Yeah. They rarely just stay friends. And for Rysand just to be her friend would be a nice take on that.
Yeah.
I can totally see Rysand just being her friend and advisor, but I cannot see Tamlin getting over his issues and accepting that dynamic. So I don't think that's gonna happen.
Also, why didn't Tamlin teach her? Like, everything Rysand says is very logical, and he has a point. But Tamlin must have had the same thought. Why didn't he teach her?
That's the thing. Like, it feels like they never spent any time together except for when they slept with each other.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even have to teach her himself. He could have just hired a tutor to be like, you are about to be a High Lord's wife. Maybe reading is an important skill that you should have. Here, learn. But this plays into my theory that Tamlin is just toxic. Because I think, hot take, because I honestly feel like subconsciously Tamlin likes that Feyre doesn't know how to read. Because her knowing how to read would give her agency, it would give her independence, and I think he just likes this power gap and to be the mightier part in this relationship. And I think he doesn't really have any interest in that power gap diminishing.
What I think is that Tamlin finds Feyre attractive and even like kind of loves her, but I think he's not really interested in her. And so he's like, Ianthe, prepare her for her role as my wife. And Ianthe is like, I won't teach her how to read because she still needs me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in this chapter, they have a lot of dialogue, and I kind of tried to summarize the points that they make.
What? Your notes aren't just Rysand quotes all over?
Yes, I tried my best. It was hard. But the next thing they talk about is that Feyre hasn't forgiven Rysand for what he did to her under the mountain. And when she brings that up, Rysand gets very still and has, quote, death now beckoning in his eyes, and he starts to hyperventilate. So it seems like he's also quite traumatized. Mm-hmm. But he snaps out of it quite fast because company is arriving. And we get to meet Morrigan. Who is Rysand's cousin. At least they were raised together. They're maybe not blood related, who knows. The closest he still has to family. And she's obviously the most beautiful woman Feyre has ever seen.
What?
Night Court has good genes.
Yes. And she's kind of the golden retriever version of Rysand.
Yeah.
Like, she has bright golden hair, sun-kissed skin, and seems to glow in the morning light. And Feyre describes her as merry but alert. And she immediately goes to hug Feyre and takes jabs at Rysand. And I fell in love with her immediately.
Same. She's awesome.
Yeah. I noticed, I don't know if that happens to me every time I read a new story, but especially in this story, like I decide very quickly if I like or dislike a character.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And she's amazing.
Yeah.
But again, I couldn't really picture her because if the only description we get is she is very beautiful. I mean, obviously, I immediately imagined Meike, but...
Wow. Ooh.
but then
Bright
it's described...
golden hair.
Yeah, but then it's described that she's blonde. So that's it. She's beautiful and blonde and just...
And Meike, you loved her anyways?
Yeah. She's
Wow.
blonde and I loved her anyways.
Wow.
But I can't really grasp an image of her.
I think I have an image of her in my mind, but like my images of characters, they're also a bit...
Wobbly.
Yeah, I can never like grasp them through they're a bit like dreams, you know?
Yeah.
You can see them, but you cannot describe them.
I have just vibes.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's funny, like how big of a coincidence is it that when we did this whole zodiac sign thingy, we had two characters which we didn't know, and now they are the first two characters we meet in this book. Ianthe and Morrigan.
Except for Hart and Bronn.
And Nuala and...
Caradwen.
Yeah, but we all
Yes,
remember
but I feel
them.
like they are side characters.
Yes,
so,
you're right.
Yeah. No, Morrigan's awesome. And I just like how normal she seems. Like, she seems like a real person. Not fabricated and not twisted in any way. I really liked her presence on these pages.
Yeah.
I was actually happy to see her. But I wondered, Rysand says she will be here for the whole week. And maybe he arranged for her to be there? Like, he says she breezes in and out of his life, but maybe he was like, hey, would you mind showing up? Because I'm going to take Feyre now, because she was calling for help. I don't know. Would you please come and give her some company? Because I'm the only man here, and we have a troubled relationship, and the only person she has in Springcourt, who's also a woman, is Ianthe, and she's having a weird effect on her. So maybe Morrigan can be like a good contrast to Ianthe.
Well, we learned that she is the woman that he talked to in the evening before, who said like, oh, well, that went well. So she is involved in some kind of plan, even if the plan is, let's go rescue Feyre.
that just kind of sounds like she's his wingman and he has to break a curse, and that's why Feyre has to fall in love with him.
Guys, that sounds like this fairy tale. The one about the beast and the beautiful girl.
Aladdin.
Yes.
But I do think she kind of has the function of Lucian in this dynamic.
Yes.
Because she's the fun, lovable character who takes jabs at the love interest or at the male leader.
I love her.
Yeah, but I agree that I think it's possible that he called her there because she's also like, ooh, now Rysand has brought me a friend. And yeah, she's just like so huggable and lovely. Yeah, I love her.
A little ray of sunshine in this night.
Wow.
Do you think she's from Day Court?
Poetic.
Well, actually, good question. I just assumed she would also be Night Court, but...
Well, that was my first assumption as well, but the way she's described and when he says, oh, we're not actually that related, but we grew up together, could be like boarding school for High Lord kids.
Yeah, you're right.
But we learned that Morrigan was actually not trapped under the mountain, but Rysand stops her before she can reveal where she has been.
Didn't she say she was there, but Feyre just didn't see her?
No, I read it as, like, Feyre says, I didn't see you under the mountain, and then Morrigan is like, oh, I was, and then she's about to say, on vacation in Italy.
She was about to say, I was in Valhalla or something.
She says, oh, I wasn't there, and I just read, oh, I was there. Oh,
yeah, Rysand
man,
is
I had this whole theory that Feyre didn't see her because she was in the band, and that she was the one who played this uplifting music.
That would have been so beautiful.
But no, she wasn't there.
But the question is, where has she been?
Yeah.
And why doesn't Rysand want Feyre to know?
Why is Rysand suddenly an agent of the plot? Why does he stop her from telling?
How dare he? They finish their breakfast, and when they do, he asks if Feyre has eaten enough, which is still a bit condescending, but also a strong contrast to Tamlin, who dictated when she had to eat and when to stop. Mm-hmm. And then they do start their lessons of reading and simultaneous shield training. Feyre still doesn't really like being in Rysand's company, and he goes on teasing her here and there. And then she exasperately asks him what his deal is and that he promised to tell her when she agrees to his lessons. And then he answers, I didn't specify when I'd tell you.
Amarantha, is that you?
It's very Amarantha of him, which I thought not the best choice here.
Yeah.
Didn't like it. They go on having their reading lessons. He wrote down a sentence and she goes through it word for word. And the sentence is, you look absolutely...
Yep.
Great sentence. What a poet.
Just like Tamlin.
And the sentence is, you look absolutely delicious, Feyre. Okay.
I like his approach to teaching, like that he asks what she already knows to find out where she is and how he can help. But this choice of a practice sentence, I think it would be funny at a later point. Like, it's a bit too early for that. Like, they have this history of him objectifying her and making her basically like his whore. Mm-hmm. Like, I think Lucian could have made that joke where they are right now, but Rysand and Feyre are not there yet. So this is a step too far.
I mean, I also felt uncomfortable with that sentence, but like as soon as she has figured out that sentence, he attacks her mind. And I thought maybe he chose a sentence that would overstep a line so that her emotions are risen so that he can attack her more easily. But I wasn't sure. Like, maybe that's also just finding an excuse for him.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a questionable method, but it works.
Yeah. And then, as I said, he attacks her mind, but he also guides her to a way of pushing him back out. And then she learns how to put up some adamantine walls to keep him out. And I like that description very much. Like, she's very much describing what is happening in her mind and describing the wave that pushes him out and the way she describes the walls that she puts back up. That's pretty cool.
I always have a hard time imagining scenes that take place inside of your mind. I don't know why that is, but whenever in a book someone is describing like mental shields or mental conversations or something like that, I'm just like, what? What? Oh, okay. And then like I grasp what it's about to tell me, but I don't really have an image in my mind. And when it goes on too long, it kind of loses me and I just skim the page and then I at some point I noticed, I kind of stopped understanding what's being written.
I think I just imagine this very literally. Like when I read this and I put up a wall of stone, I think my head just imagined a brain and a brick wall.
I imagined, like, I don't know where I've seen it. Probably a bank robbery scene, and then all the metal walls like dong, 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 go down, and that's what I imagined.
Nice.
Her mind is a vault.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, you do store your treasures there in some form. Deep shit, bro, yeah. After that, they talk about Nynsa, a holiday Amarantha had outlawed because she found it boring and unnecessary. But then Feyre asks if she will still be bound to their bargain by next Nynsa. And Rhysand does not give an answer. And instead they start to fight again. Feyre just wants to forget what happened under the mountain. But Rhysand criticizes that she is being coddled and treated like a present for Tamlin. And he criticizes exactly the same things that have bothered her the last few months. That they are keeping her cooped up, nice and safe. And he says that that will only get worse once she starts birthing children. And with that, he leaves her to practice.
I felt conflicted about this little fight because I think everything Rhysand says is correct. I just don't like how he says it in a mean way to Feyre. Because, I don't know, it's not her fault that is happening. And she's at a point where she already has doubt. So I think, like, a nice approach to the topic would be the cleverer option. Like, this is just making Feyre angry. And when she's angry, I don't feel like she's able to be like, oh yeah, Rhysand, you have a point. I maybe should talk to Tamlin about this. I think it just makes her think, no, I should defend Tamlin. Like, our love is strong and I like it.
Rhysand has a point, but he's not a very good communicator.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like when someone tells you to do something that you were already about to do. And then you just kind of don't want to do it anymore out of spite.
So yeah, he leaves her there to practice reading and mind shielding. So I guess Feyre will have like 3 new powers, if you want to call reading a power. It is power. It gives her power. Yeah. One is reading, one is mind shielding, mind shenanigans, and the third one is super strength, which he does confirm that she has.
Yeah, I think it's a bit earlier when he says that basically she has the combined power of 7 High Lords somehow contained in her immortal being now because she's been resurrected by them, or at least some shard of their power.
Yeah, like she got life power from the High Lords, and he wonders what else transferred with that.
Yeah, and apparently it is super strength.
Yeah, or at least it's manifesting in super strength because she's folding a fork.
Yeah.
Very much Tamlin fashion.
True. But what struck with me strongly was that he's like, weren't you curious to find out? Haven't you tested yourself? And I found it so sad that no one in Spring Court either noticed or cared enough to try and find out. Like, Rhysand is right. Like, if you have basic interests in another person, wouldn't it dictate a bit of interest in, like, their newly acquired abilities?
Yeah, I think this just boils down to everything that's wrong with Spring Court right now. It doesn't even matter if they are good people or not. They are so in over their heads right now that they don't care about Feyre, and Feyre right now needs someone who cares about her. And Lukas, you said earlier that you think Tamlin kind of doesn't want to do anything to diminish their power gap. And if he notices or not, I don't feel like Tamlin would be one to be like, oh, this is interesting, let's investigate it. And Lucien, he's so in this whole, I just want to go back to normal. I want everything the way it was. I don't want anything new and anything special. And even if he noticed, and last chapter Feyre like pushed him and he like got pushed back, he might have been curious about that, but then he was like, I don't want anything to do with that.
But I feel like with the dynamic they had in book 1, especially Lucien would have been the one to be like, hey, what is up with that? Let's find out. Let's talk to Tamlin. Let's see what's going on. But it truly makes me sad.
Yeah.
And it, on the other hand, makes me happy that Rhysand is like, hey, let's find out. Let's test. Like, wouldn't you want to test? And sure, she's like, no, why would I? But because she's in that defensive position right now where she's like, everything you suggest is bad.
And this also promises just an interesting plot.
Yeah.
Because I feel like reading about how someone discovers their superpower is just always fun.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a master-apprentice plot with Rüzi and Feyre, and I'm just genuinely looking forward to reading this.
Yeah.
And I also think that's what was missing from the beginning of book 1, a plot. Like I feel like stories always have two plots, like one bigger umbrella plot that was, I think, the romance in book 1, but it also needs like a second plot that just kind of does something else to the story. And the beginning of book 1 just didn't have that. It had some mystery that was, I think, trying to be this plot. But here, if we have maybe a romance or just, a platonic relationship developing between Rhys and Feyre, we can also have this cool master and apprentice plot that is fun to read about.
I guess the end of this chapter is hinting very strongly at just another higher plot.
Yes.
Yeah. Coming to that, in the evening, Rysand picks Feyre back up. She has practiced a lot and gotten a lot better. But he leads her to some sort of war room.
That was so cool.
Yeah. And there's like a big map of the whole world.
No, I think it's just the location of the war room.
That's true.
It's like in the highest tower, in the highest room of the highest tower of this estate. And they walk up there and the night and the wind and the mist and the fury through the open windows.
Yeah.
And it's this cool, vibey room and I liked it.
Yeah. It was pretty awesome. And there's like this big map of the world. When I first read it, I thought it was made out of stone, but I think it just hangs on a long slab of stone.
Isn't it on a table?
There are two maps.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
There's a wall map of the world and then a Prithian map on the table.
Right, yes.
So there's a big map of the world with flags and pins in it. So very strategic, war-y things happening. And then a smaller map of Prithian and Hybern. So probably kind of like the map in the beginning of the book. But the Night Court has strategically been left out, left empty, and there's no information about Night Court on that map.
Actually, that made me wonder, if Rysand has this map hanging in his palace, does that maybe mean that the most northern part of Night Court is concealed even to someone living in Night Court?
I thought he wants her opinions on whatever war plans or peace plans, who knows, he has. But he does not want to risk revealing anything to Tamlin. And that's why he leaves all the information of Night Court out of there. But I agree, we have learned, nobody has ever been able to map out this Night Court. So maybe that's also his plan. Who knows?
Who knows?
But yeah, he directs her attention to the wall and that the world is divided in two. And he asks if it should stay that way or not. And it is unclear if the wall will stand or fall because war is coming, Feyre.
Dun, dun, dun.
Nice.
Winter is coming. And that's the end of the chapter.
Very nice.
I liked it a lot.
I think a lot of things happened in dialogue in these chapters, which I do like. It's just a bit hard to summarize that.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's nice to read dialogue with purpose. Yes, I enjoyed these chapters.
Yeah, they are just a great setup.
Yeah, and Night Court just feels like such a great setting. I'd like to stay there. Do you think he will let her go home very soon or just after a week, or will she just stay there forever, or will this whole plot be during 1 week?
Maybe something will prevent her from going back, or she will go. I don't think she will stay yet, at least not of free will. But I don't think Rysand will keep her.
No.
That would not fit his character.
I think she will just stay there out of her free will because she realized that Tamlin is just a toxic motherfucker and she doesn't want anything to do with him ever again. And then she just falls in love with Rysand and stays there forever as High Lady of the Night Court.
There are no High Ladies.
But there will be a Night Court because Rysand acknowledges that this system of there being no High Lady is just bullshit. And he has the power to change things.
Feminist king.
Yes, obviously.
I think that maybe there will be not a time skip, but more like a rushed part, that we rush through a bit of time.
Montage. montage.
A montage, right, thank you. Where she like goes back and forth to Spring Court and back to Night Court again. And in Spring Court, it's always like, yeah, sure, yay, happy Tamlin. But it's also awkward because I didn't want to marry him. And then she has to go back and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, Tamlin, but I have to. And then she's in Night Court and she's like, I actually kind of love it. And that's just the dynamic for the next few chapters.
But that would also feel kind of strange.
I just think that would be so boring to have her go back and forth. But maybe she can at least have her talk with Tamlin. Like, I would be sad if we would miss out on the chance of her going back after this 1 week. And Tamlin being like, was it awful? Was he awful to you? Let's get married. And she's like, it wasn't awful. I actually thought a lot. And no, we're not getting married. Like, I want to see that conflict.
I could also see that Tamlin and her will not be reunited maybe until the very end of this book, for whatever reason. Not necessarily that she chooses to stay there, but maybe something else happens.
An attack.
Maybe she get lost in Night Court or something.
It would be refreshing. Well, but to find out what happens next, you will have to stay tuned with this podcast, and to do that, it's best to subscribe.
I mean, you have to subscribe to this podcast, because I've heard that all copies of A Court of Mist and Furies have been destroyed in the entire world. We have the only ones left. So that means to even know what will happen in the plot, you will have to listen to this podcast.
Also, it is our birthday. And on your birthday, you can wish for whatever you want. And we're wishing for you to listen to us.
Please.
Period. No, I have a different... I think we have 3 wishes.
That fits with Aladdin.
Meike wishes for you all to keep on listening to us. And I wish for you all to maybe think of a friend or a colleague or a family member that would really enjoy a nice ACOTAR-themed chapter-by-chapter podcast. And then you can go to them and recommend us, because that really helps. Lea, what would be your wish?
Well, now I'm stuck between 2 wishes.
Your wish can be that you want 2 more wishes.
Okay, I wish for 2 more wishes.
Granted.
Okay, so the first of my 2 more wishes is that you would pretty please if you like to rate this podcast, because that also helps. And if you like this podcast, maybe even consider giving it a 5-star review. And also my second wish is that you go check out our socials that are at Getting Fae'd Pod on Instagram and TikTok. And there you can, as a reward, get some memes and outtakes and some highlights. Yay!
And maybe you will get a little birthday present on our actual birthday tomorrow. Maybe.
So stay tuned for that. And tune in next time when we are
Getting Fae'd!